I never thought I would be writing this, but recent events have left me with no choice. I, 28F, come from a middle-class family in the suburbs of Chicago. My mom died in a car accident when I was 2, leaving my dad, 58M, to raise me alone. The accident happened on a rainy night when a drunk driver hit her car head-on. Dad never really talked about it much, but I know it broke him. Despite his grief, he worked hard as a real estate agent to give me a good life. Growing up, it was just Dad and me. He would take me to soccer practice, help with homework, and even learn to braid my hair by watching YouTube videos. We weren't rich, but Dad made sure I never felt like I was missing out. He built a successful real estate business from scratch, working long hours but always making time for our Sunday movie nights. Dad's family was very involved in my life during those early years. My Aunt Emma would watch me after school, and weekends were spent at my grandparents' house. We were a tight-knit family, always celebrating holidays and birthdays together. Dad dated occasionally but never seriously, saying his priority was raising me. Things changed drastically when I was 12. Dad met Amber, 45F, while showing her a house. She had recently divorced and moved to our area with her daughter Amy, 16F. Amber came across as sophisticated and charming. She worked in marketing and always dressed impeccably. Amy was quiet but seemed nice enough. Dad and Amber started dating, and it felt like a whirlwind romance. Within 6 months, they were married in a small ceremony. I was happy for Dad at first. He seemed to smile more, and Amber appeared to make him happy. She would cook elaborate meals and organize family outings. I even started to think maybe having a stepmom wouldn't be so bad. The problems started subtly. Amber convinced Dad we needed to move to a more upscale neighborhood to help his business image. She found a huge house in the most expensive part of town, saying it would be perfect for entertaining clients. Dad was hesitant because of the massive mortgage, but Amber insisted it was a good investment. After we moved, everything changed. Dad had to work longer hours to afford the mortgage payments. Amber redecorated the entire house, spending thousands on new furniture and artwork. When Dad expressed concern about the expenses, she would guilt him by saying he didn't want her to feel at home. Amber began commenting on how much attention Dad gave me. She would say things like she's not a baby anymore or you're babying her too much. If Dad and I watched a movie together, she would complain we were excluding her and Amy. She started planning weekend trips that coincidentally fell on my soccer game days, so Dad had to miss them. The isolation from family happened gradually. First, Amber would say she had already made other plans when Dad's siblings wanted to visit. Then she started complaining about how overwhelming family gatherings were. She convinced Dad to spend holidays at expensive resorts instead of with family, claiming we needed to create our own traditions. I watched helplessly as Dad's relationship with his family deteriorated. Aunt Emma would call, but Amber would say Dad was too busy to talk. Family dinner invitations were declined because Amber always had some excuse. Eventually, the invitations stopped coming. When I turned 18, I moved away for college to study psychology. Dad helped with tuition despite Amber's vocal protests. She argued that since Amy would need college money too, I should take loans. She would make snide comments about my expensive education and how psychology wasn't a real career. During college, my visits home became less frequent. Amber would make me feel unwelcome in subtle ways. She would forget to set a place for me at dinner or make comments about how messy my old room was. If Dad bought me anything, she would mention how he never spent that much on Amy. Last year, everything fell apart when Dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I immediately took a leave from my job and moved back home to help care for him. Amber seemed annoyed by my presence, constantly telling Dad that she could handle everything. She would try to schedule his doctor appointments when I was out and forget to tell me about them. I noticed Amber spent a lot of time on her phone, often leaving the room to take calls. She claimed they were work-related, but something felt off. She would get defensive if Dad asked about the calls and started password protecting her phone. One evening, when Amber was at a work dinner, Dad confided in me. He was worried about Amber's behavior and suspected she was having an affair. He had seen suspicious texts on her phone when she left it unlocked. He also revealed that Amber had been pressuring him to change his will, wanting a larger share for herself and Amy. She argued that since they had been married for 16 years, she deserved most of the estate. Dad passed away 3 months ago. The will reading was yesterday, and Amber's true colors came out. Dad had left 70% of his estate to me, including the house and his business shares. He left 20% to his siblings and only 10% to Amber and Amy. Amber exploded, screaming that the will was invalid and that Dad wasn't in his right mind. What Amber doesn't know is that Dad had recorded videos before his death, explaining his decisions. He expressed concern about Amber's behavior and said he wanted to protect me and his family's inheritance. He had suspected something was wrong but was too weak to investigate. Now Amber and Amy refuse to leave the house. They've changed the locks on some doors and claim it's their home too. Amber's been calling Dad's siblings, telling them I manipulated Dad during his illness to steal their inheritance. Some relatives are believing her, especially since she's been part of the family for so long. Amber's also been contacting Dad's business associates, spreading rumors that I forced him to change the will. Some clients have pulled their listings, affecting the business. I've had to hire a lawyer to handle this mess. I know I'm right to stand my ground, but seeing Amber twist everything makes me angry. My Aunt Emma thinks I should give Amber a larger share to keep the peace, but that would mean betraying Dad's final wishes. I need advice on how to handle this situation without letting Amber manipulate everyone further. Update 1: These past 2 weeks have been absolute chaos, but what happened yesterday changed everything. I need to share how this whole situation exploded in ways no one could have predicted. After my last post, Amber escalated things by filing a lawsuit challenging Dad's will. Her lawyer sent aggressive letters claiming Dad wasn't mentally competent when he made the will. She even got some of Dad's old business partners to sign affidavits saying they noticed him acting confused in his final months. My lawyer assured me these claims were weak, but dealing with the legal pressure was stressful. Amber continued living in the house, taking over the master bedroom and moving my dad's things to the garage without my permission. She told neighbors I was trying to make her and Amy homeless, painting herself as a grieving widow being persecuted by her cruel stepdaughter. Some neighbors started giving me dirty looks and one even left a nasty note on my car. But everything changed when I received an unexpected call from my lawyer last Thursday. A man named Michael Bennett had contacted his office with information about Amber. What he revealed left everyone stunned. Amber was legally married to him in Nevada while she was married to my dad. Michael discovered Amber's double life when he found papers about my dad's estate in their shared home office. He had no idea Amber was married to my dad and was shocked to learn about her deception. According to Michael, Amber had been living a completely separate life with him and their 15-year-old son Tommy for the past 12 years. Amber would tell Dad she was visiting her sick mother in Nevada every few weeks. In reality, she was going to her other home with Michael and Tommy. She had maintained this deception for over a decade, carefully scheduling her time between both families. She even had separate phones and email accounts to keep her lives separate. When my lawyer met with Michael, he brought years of evidence, marriage certificate, joint tax returns, family photos, everything. The most shocking part was learning that Amber had met Michael just months after marrying my dad. She had planned and executed this deception from almost the beginning of her marriage to my dad. The revelations kept coming. Michael shared security camera footage from their Nevada home showing Amber there during times she told my dad she was on business trips. There were birthday party videos, holiday celebrations, and family vacations, all while she was supposedly working or caring for her sick mother. Amy was devastated when she learned the truth. She showed up at my apartment yesterday, crying and telling me everything. Amber had manipulated her throughout my dad's illness, promising her a large inheritance if she supported the challenge to the will. Amber had convinced Amy that Dad was playing favorites by leaving me more money, using Amy's insecurities about being a stepdaughter to turn her against me. Amy revealed that Amber had coached her on what to say to the lawyer and family members. She was supposed to claim she heard Dad and me having arguments about the will, even though those conversations never happened. Amber had even written a script for Amy to follow when talking to Dad's siblings. Speaking of Dad's siblings, they're mortified. Aunt Emma called me sobbing, apologizing for doubting me. She shared stories of how Amber had systematically driven wedges between Dad and his family over the years. Amber would tell Dad that his siblings were jealous of his success, while telling the siblings that Dad was too busy for them. She played both sides perfectly, ensuring the family grew apart. The most disturbing discovery was the financial aspect. My lawyer found evidence that Amber had been transferring money from Dad's accounts to her life with Michael throughout the marriage. She set up fake vendor accounts through Dad's real estate business, making it look like legitimate business expenses. Over 16 years, she had stolen nearly $200,000 this way. Michael immediately filed for divorce after learning about Amber's deception. He's working with my lawyer, providing all financial records showing how Amber moved money between her two lives. The police are now involved, investigating Amber for potential fraud and bigamy charges. Amy has moved in with her biological father, unable to face her mother's lies anymore. She wrote me a long letter apologizing for her role in everything, explaining how Amber had used her need for maternal approval to manipulate her. She included text messages from Amber showing how she had orchestrated the whole inheritance scheme. Amber's reaction to being exposed was both predictable and shocking. She tried to claim Michael was lying, then switched to saying she had divorced him years ago but lost the paperwork. When that didn't work, she tried to blame my dad, claiming he knew about Michael and had agreed to an arrangement. Nobody's buying her stories anymore. The lawsuit challenging Dad's will has been withdrawn by Amber's lawyer, who quit representing her after learning about the bigamy. She's now trying to find new lawyers, but none want to touch her case. She's still in the house but hasn't been seen outside in days. My lawyer is working on having her removed legally. I'm still processing everything. Finding out that the woman who spent 16 years as my stepmom was living a complete double life is overwhelming. Dad never knew the truth about who he was really married to, and that breaks my heart. But at least now everyone knows what kind of person Amber really is. My lawyer says this revelation changes everything legally. Not only will Amber's challenge to the will fail, but she'll likely face criminal charges. He's already working on getting her portion of the inheritance revoked since her marriage to Dad wasn't legally valid. I'll update again when there are more developments. Right now, I'm focusing on working with my lawyer to get Amber out of the house and helping Amy deal with this nightmare. The police want to interview me next week about the financial fraud, so that should bring more information to light. Update 2: What happened in the last few weeks has made Amber's double marriage seem almost tame in comparison. My lawyer's investigation into Amber's past uncovered a pattern of behavior that shocked everyone, including her husband Michael. After the bigamy discovery, my lawyer hired a private investigator to look into Amber's background. What they found was disturbing. Amber had done this before, not once but twice. She had targeted wealthy men, married them, and tried to gain control of their assets while maintaining relationships with other men. The PI found her first victim, Robert Carson, in Florida. She married him in 2001 when she was just starting her con career. She followed the same pattern, isolated him from family, pushed for expensive purchases, and tried to change his will. She even used the sick mother excuse back then to cover her absences. Robert's sister reached out to me, saying Amber had nearly destroyed their family before disappearing in 2004 with a large portion of Robert's savings. The second victim was James Wilson from Texas. She married him in 2005, just months after leaving Robert. With James, she refined her technique. She managed to convince him to sign over his beach house to her before he discovered she was still legally married to Robert. When James confronted her, she vanished, taking expensive jewelry and his car with her. Both Robert and James came forward with documentation proving Amber's fraud. James even had security footage from 2005 showing Amber breaking into his house after he discovered her lies. She was trying to steal documents that could prove her fraud. This evidence helped us get an emergency restraining order against her, as my lawyer worried she might try to break into Dad's house to destroy evidence. The investigation also revealed that Amber had changed her name multiple times. She was born Susan Reynolds, then became Amber Carson, then Amber Wilson, and finally Amber Bennett/Marshall, using both Michael's and my dad's surnames. She had driver's licenses and credit cards under various combinations of these names. What's really disturbing is how calculated everything was. The PI found Amber's old laptop in the garage, and the browser history showed she had researched Dad's finances and business long before meeting him. She had deliberately gotten a job with one of Dad's business associates to engineer their chance meeting. Everything about their relationship had been planned. Amber's current life completely fell apart once these revelations came out. Her marketing firm fired her after learning about the fraud investigations. Her friends, who she'd manipulated with stories about me being a cruel stepdaughter, now know the truth. Even her country club membership was revoked, which apparently bothered her more than the criminal investigation. Amy came by yesterday with more revelations. She found old journals in their storage unit that detailed Amber's plans. There were lists of potential targets, wealthy men, notes about their finances, and strategies for isolating them from family. Dad's name was on a list from 2006, years before she met him. Amy was horrified to discover that her mother had planned everything, including using her to gain Dad's trust. The police investigation expanded to include all of Amber's previous frauds. They found offshore accounts where she had hidden money stolen from her various husbands. She had nearly $500,000 stashed away from her various schemes. Michael has been cooperative throughout this process. He's as devastated as anyone, having believed he was in an exclusive marriage with Amber for 12 years. Their son Tommy is struggling to understand why his mother lived a double life. Michael's lawyer is working with mine to trace all the stolen money. Amber's response to these discoveries was unexpected. Instead of running, she's trying to claim she has a mental disorder that causes her to create multiple lives. No one's buying it, especially since her journals show careful planning and calculations. She's trying to gather sympathy from anyone who will listen, but her reputation in the community is destroyed. Yesterday, the police found evidence that Amber had been planning her next target even before Dad got sick. She had already created a dating profile and was researching another wealthy businessman in a nearby city. She actually had spreadsheets comparing potential victims based on their net worth and vulnerability to manipulation. I'm still processing all this information. The woman who lived with us for 16 years, who I tried to accept as family, was nothing but a calculating fraudster. She played everyone, including her own daughter and the son she had with Michael. The depth of her deception is almost unbelievable. The criminal investigation is ongoing, and my lawyer says there will likely be multiple charges across several states. For now, Amber has finally moved out of the house, though only after the police threatened to arrest her for trespassing. I'm changing all the locks and installing security cameras, just in case. I'll update again when there are more developments, especially after the criminal charges are filed. Right now, I'm focusing on helping Amy and working with the investigators to piece together the full extent of Amber's deceptions. Update 3: The final chapter of this nightmare has finally been written. Amber's house of cards came crashing down in the most satisfying way possible. After months of investigation, Amber was arrested and charged with multiple felonies across 3 states. The charges included fraud, bigamy, grand theft, and identity theft. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The prosecutors had her detailed journals, financial records, and testimony from all 3 husbands, Dad's videos, Michael's evidence, and statements from her previous victims. Amber tried to play the mental illness card in court, bringing in a psychiatrist who claimed she suffered from a personality disorder. The judge wasn't convinced, especially after the prosecution showed her methodical planning through her journal entries and spreadsheets. The final nail in her coffin was the evidence that she had already been researching her next victim while Dad was sick. She ended up pleading guilty to avoid a longer sentence but still got 15 years in prison. The judge was particularly harsh, citing her exploitation of terminally ill Dad and the psychological damage he caused to Amy and Tommy. She's also been ordered to repay over $800,000 to her victims' families, including the money she stole from Dad's accounts. Amy has been in intensive therapy, dealing with the trauma of discovering her entire childhood was built on lies. She found out that Amber had manipulated her biological father during their divorce, using similar tactics to isolate Amy from him. She's rebuilding her relationship with her dad now and is starting to heal. While I sympathize with her situation, I've maintained minimal contact to avoid getting pulled back into any drama. Michael and Tommy moved back to Nevada. Tommy is also in therapy, struggling to understand how his mother could lead such an elaborate double life. Michael has been cooperative throughout the legal proceedings, helping to trace all the money Amber had hidden in various accounts. The most unexpected development was the response from the real estate community. After Amber's sentencing, several of Dad's old clients came forward with stories about how she had tried to manipulate them into making risky investments through Dad's business. She had apparently been running smaller scams alongside her marriage fraud, using Dad's reputation to gain people's trust. Dad's siblings and I have completely rebuilt our relationship. We now understand how Amber systematically destroyed our family bonds with her lies and manipulation. We have monthly family dinners, something Amber had prevented for years. My aunt Emma helped me renovate Dad's house, which I've decided to keep. We turned Amber's home office into a memory room for Dad, displaying his awards and family photos that Amber had hidden in the garage. I've started working with a fraud awareness organization that helps protect elderly people from scammers like Amber. We use Dad's story, with details changed, to show how these predators operate. I've also connected with Robert and James's families, and we're working together to help other victims of marriage fraud. The karma didn't stop with Amber's imprisonment. Her cellmate turned out to be someone she had scammed in her earlier cons, a former friend whose identity she had stolen. The prison guards say Amber requested solitary confinement within a week. Looking back, I realized Dad must have suspected something wasn't right with Amber, which is why he left the estate mostly to me and his siblings. He tried to protect us even when he couldn't prove what Amber was doing. The videos he recorded during his illness show he knew something was wrong but couldn't piece it all together. I'm finally at peace with everything that happened. Amber's betrayal of our family was complete and calculated, but in the end, justice prevailed. I'm focusing on honoring Dad's memory and helping prevent others from falling victim to people like Amber. The house feels like a home again, filled with family and genuine love, everything Amber tried to destroy but ultimately failed to take away from us.